I made you cookies.
Oh? Just 'cause?
No. This is a peace offering. Because I'm about to make you angry.
Bomb has been planted.
And I knew that if I told you where they were, you'd just start pulling your tubes out and crawling on your hands and knees to get there.
I don't give a fuck.
First of all, this town was wreckage and funerals for weeks. Nobody was gonna go after anyone.
Bomb has been defused.
Okay, let's start with names.
The town is still recovering. So are you.
We get where you're coming from.
No, we don't get where you're coming from.
I don't get where you're coming from.
And you hold out information on me again, you got rendering detail for a month. All right.
My heart is with you, Tommy and Ellie.
The vote is 8-3. The proposal is rejected.
Who is it?
Dina.
Hey! I'm just going to bed.
No, I don't think that is where you're going. Get it. Oh, Christ.
So, what's your plan?
Go to Seattle and kill Abby.
What route?
Northwest?
And is that all guns, or do you have medical supplies in there? No? Well, better not land weird on an ankle or get a fever on your well-charted path northwest.
Okay, so what am I supposed to do?
Follow the Snake River Canyon, then break off through the Snoqualmie Pass.
Snoqualmie?
Yeah, Snoqualmie.
2 weeks worth of hardtack, bandages, alcohol, meds, batteries. I'd come with you, but I caught some friendly fire on New Year's Day.
Sure it's from me. Jesus Christ.
Sorry, Ellie. Interesting. I shoot a guy and he feels sorry for me.
I'm just loyal like that. Let me know if you see any outcroppings or spots with cover.
Why? That's okay. Holy shit, that came on fast. How the fuck did you know that was gonna happen?
I'm a witch.
Clearly. Well, good night.
Right. Okay, but I have a stupid question.
Scale of 1 to 10.
No. You've kissed girls before. You're gay, I'm not. I'm just curious. Wanna know if I'm any good at it. 1 to 10.
Okay, fine, 6.
Fuck you, 6.
That's not bad. That sucks. Fucking Seattle. Pretty.
Plus no one's shooting at us. Guess there aren't that many wolves.
There's about to be a whole lot less.
Curtis or Viper?
What? No. It's just me. I was trying to sound like a badass. You didn't even try.
Hello Cordyceps infected and fellow mudbeards, and we'll be doing another video on The Last of Us. In today's video, we're going to be discussing on why Dina is the absolute best character in The Last of Us. And to answer that question, it's basically Isabella Merced.
Hi, I'm Isabella Merced and I play Dina.
Hi, I'm Young Mazzino and I play Jesse.
No last names.
Oh, I'm playing.
No, I know. Sorry.
But what did you guys think? Did you have a favorite character? Let me know down below. Either way, appreciate your feedback, appreciate your support, and remember, patience is a virtue. No, of course there are more factors at play here than just Isabella Merced's performance. Let's go ahead and get into the character directly. One thing we've seen throughout this episode that is very abundantly clear is that Dina has the patience of a saint. One narrative aspect they decided to keep in the show as opposed to the games is during the 5-year time gap, Ellie in the games did receive a little bit more maturing than the Ellie in the show. While in the games she had mostly grown out of such a combative and aggressive nature, she still had some of those characteristics within her, but you can tell she had a lot more focus and a lot more patience. Versus in the show, it seems she's very much still in the same state of mind that she was in season 1, very angry, very hostile, very aggressive towards a lot of people around her. The only moments we've really seen of maturing for her within the show is when she decides to treat Jesse a little nicely, which is a bit of a low bar, but in general I just feel it was portrayed in the game just a little bit better. Which, as a side note, her maturity and the way she's acting is more on the writer than anything Bella Ramsey is doing. Which, for those like myself who wanted to see Bella Ramsey at least represent a version of a wasteland survivor in badass apocalyptic gear, if you've seen the promo for the next episode, it looks like we're getting some action with a wasteland Ellie. And of course I'm purely talking aesthetics here. Either way, I'm hyped for the next episode. I just don't think that big puffy winter jacket was doing Bella any favors in regards to that 5-year time gap. But now she looks full blown ready for war and I'm all for it. Now, there's several reasons why one might find Dina the most charming character of The Last of Us show. She's intelligent, loyal, charismatic, but if you look at other characters that she's going up against, she's not the only one that falls into some of these factors. So I'm just basically going to go down through some of the factions and characters we've gotten throughout the show and just kind of compare them and explain why I think Dina is the best character within this show. You have Fedra. By the beginning of the story, they are the most widespread and powerful faction. But with that, they're also the most corrupt. They enact a lot of harsh and inhumane policies, but not only that, they employ and arm very malicious and very dangerous individuals. The citizens of any QZ or Fedra-owned facility are likely to be subjugated to a lot of mistreatment. But let's talk about the citizens themselves. What happens when the citizens rise back up and take back control over Fedra? Well, we see in season 1 that they eventually fall into the same line of corruption and mistreatment that Fedra did. But what about the Fireflies? Those who are looking for light in the darkness, those who are fighting the good fight, those who genuinely risked everything to try to find a cure. Well, at the end of the day, it's good to fight for others and stand up against corruption. Sometimes, in the pursuit of good, you can forget to do great. The Fireflies reached a point, and probably many others that we just didn't see, where they became very inhumane in refusing to give Ellie or Joel a choice in communicating or discussing the options of such a dangerous procedure. I'm still not 100% sure why they were in such a rush, outside of the world is pretty crappy and we need to fix it as soon as possible. I think, given the control they had over the situation, they could have held off a few more days and talked about it. Now, I would go into the factions of the Seraphites and the WLF, but we haven't seen much of them yet, and I plan on going into them in another video. But let's touch on the folks of Jackson. In Jackson, you seemingly found the perfect community. They found power, they found protection, they are formed by people who know how to survive off of the land, veterans, medical professionals, and they're at the point where they can even take in refugees. But that kind of leads to my biggest point. The people of Jackson aren't necessarily the smartest. See, they had a big kerfuffle about taking in refugees, and what do we see at the beginning of this episode and 3 months later after a time skip? Joel and his entire house with multiple rooms is still completely empty. What's going on? I thought there was a whole problem out there with refugees. Maybe because of all the people that died in Jackson, there was a lot more room for vacancy, and I'd be willing to accept that. But to still have an entire empty house dedicated to a dead man is a little bit crazy. In normal common world society, yes, it makes perfect sense. Pay homage, leave it up, and let the spirit kind of linger on for a little bit. Let's get to this next point. During the Battle of Jackson, one of Jackson's biggest mistakes was the fact that after so many years in the apocalypse, they only developed one line of wall. Not many people were purely born and raised in Jackson, and a lot of them had found their way there, which makes you think if they had seen places like QZs with giant concrete walls go down because of the infected, why would one set of wooden pillars do any better? But let's cut into the few of the townsfolk we've actually seen so far. See, in the most recent episode of The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 3, we get a town hall meeting where everyone comes together and tries to discuss things. The idea being, should we take revenge for people who had cornered Joel? And Dina's actually present for most of this meeting, but they all decide to meet to address the idea of what to do about the WLF and what they'd done to Joel. Dina is purely there for Ellie, and I think part of her is also willing to go and wants to go get revenge for Joel in general, but as a whole, she's just there as a loyal support system. But let's take a look at some of the other townsfolk. The one person to very vocally and outwardly stand by Ellie's side is the bigot. And while contextually it makes sense, he likes his community to be a certain way, so that type of thinking combined with a closed mind and a little bit of alcohol could lead him to say the horrible things he said on New Year's Eve. And it also makes sense that if someone came into his community and took one of his own, he'd feel like that was a personal attack. Which in some ways it kind of was. He raised a good point that people came into your home and there should be actions taken about it. But the biggest argument is, what actions should be taken about it? They had just come under attack. Their walls are barely being put back up. And they're talking about sending 16 people all the way to Seattle in the hopes of getting revenge? Obviously not all 16 are guaranteed to come back, and you're leaving Jackson defenseless, 2 points they touched upon. But another point that I find is crazy is that no one has talked about the fact that if they go and try to take revenge, whether they're successful or not, they are more likely to piss off the WLF as a whole, which only leads to a greater likelihood of retaliation from the WLF. You're already at risk because another group had seen your community vulnerable, had taken a member from your community and killed them, and had walked away without a scratch. This puts Jackson at a high potential for the WLF coming back to them, even if it's just to find a new home to live. But is the best idea really to go and incite a war as soon as possible? There is still the argument to be made that they were just after Joel, and with a lot of the community members, there is a context to be given on why Joel did what he did and why they would want revenge. That risk of the WLF maybe looking for resources eventually and coming to Jackson is a lot lower and less likely if nobody retaliates now and they spend this time to maybe fortify a little better and instead observe. Instead of sending a team to deliver justice, send a smaller team to perform reconnaissance. And leave Ellie at home, because you know if she comes with you on the reconnaissance mission, she's gonna stir up some trouble. This way you get a look at who the WLF are, how they go about their systems, and if they're people they should really worry about in general. Patience, peace, and thought process are always the best way to respond to dramatic situations. And Firelord Ozai himself even said so. See, one of the townsfolk had stepped up and decided to let everybody know that it's best to sort of forgive and forget. And what makes me mad is this one guy had a really good point to make, but they made him sound a little bit rudimentary. He could have conveyed the biggest point of all, and that was retaliation, but nobody really brought that subject up. And with covering some of those factions, let's go ahead and get into some more characters specifically. And I'll obviously be glossing over the more malicious characters we've seen so far. See, the character of Dina is going up against the likes of icons of Ellie and Joel. But the reason why I say Dina is a better character than both these people is because of their penchant for violence. While Ellie definitely seeks it a little more often, Joel is someone who's just very talented with it. But either way, both of them go about it in a very unempathetic way. And it is the wasteland, and people are bound to harden and get a little bit more tough out there, but we still see survivors who carry a good conscience and a good heart. And I'll touch more on why I think Dina is better than Joel a little bit later in the video in a spoiler section, specifically because Joel is a fan favorite. But let's go ahead and cut to Jesse. Jesse is a character who isn't as aggressive, malicious, or violent as Ellie or Joel, let alone any of the other factions we've seen out there. We've also seen that, like Dina, he's very smart, him willing to put aside his own emotions and concerns to help Ellie and give her some advice on how she can hopefully convince the council of her goals. And I wouldn't say there is much to debate that Jesse is the most morally good character we've seen within The Last of Us. But the question isn't really who is the most morally good, it's who is the best. See, having a morally good character is really great when you have other more multi-dimensional characters to help balance them out. It makes them seem like a standout in so many people who have lost their humanity. But there are people who fall more in the in-between line of that. Those who have faced trauma, hardships, and don't necessarily always make the right decisions, but still are very charming and want to do the right thing at the end of the day either way. And this, of course, is Dina. It's easy to forget about that Dina is someone who was also raised in the apocalypse, and something they touched upon in the actual Last of Us podcast was the fact that Dina had asked Ellie who her first kill was, but Ellie never asked Dina. Given that the question was orchestrated in a very coming of age sort of dialogue between two people, sort of a what was your first time doing a backflip or a cool basketball shot sort of conversation. Only in this context, it's literal murder. And while it makes sense for Ellie to completely neglect Dina in this moment, and she continues to do so throughout the rest of the episode, Dina continues to prove she has the patience of, and I'll say it again, a saint. But just because she has the patience of a saint doesn't mean she actually is a saint. See, we've seen throughout this episode that she keeps playing games with Ellie. family. And I don't care what you've been through, I don't care what trauma you've endured or what apocalypse endeavors you've actually been a part of, at the end of the day, you shouldn't mindfuck with anybody. Does this make her the most evil person in the world? No. And especially by comparison to a lot of the other characters within this series. But in comparison to characters like Jessie, there is an obvious difference between what their actual intentions are. Dina is very kind and very considerate and very loyal, but she also has some very noticeable wants and needs. But if morality isn't what dictates who the best character of the show is, then why wouldn't Joel be up there? For that, I have to go into a little bit of spoilers and touch on the game just a little bit. See, within the games, Ellie gets two sources of very pivotal love and connection within her life. That's both from Joel and from Dina. But these are two very different types of relationships, and I love the way they were illustrated within the games because you can kind of see why it's important to have people like them within your life. But let's get into one of my biggest points. There is huge difference between the show and the game's interpretation of Joel as a character. See, in the games, Joel was a walking, stone cold tank. He was someone who moved through the apocalypse enduring violence simply because he had to. But he also was very good at it. He was someone who, whenever he was violent, it came off almost easy for him. You also have the whole decision with the Fireflies, which at the end of the day was a selfish decision. Whether it was the right decision or not is up for debate. But let's cut to the show's version of Joel. In the show's version, he does follow a lot of the same narrative beats, but I gotta say, he comes off as a little bit more of a sad, grumpy old man. And sure, he does have moments where he does get a little violent, and these moments it seems like a spark of passion finally reigniting, versus in the games, it seems like a bottled up set of rage just ready to be released. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do think subjectively you can find and like different aspects of each version of the character. At the end of the day, this is just the biased reason why I like Dina more than Joel inside of the show. But does that mean that Dina is my favorite character? Within the games, no, not so much. Within the show, not yet. I think there is a lot of potential for her to become my favorite character given how the story's going so far, but as of right now, she's just not quite there yet, as I have an idea of where her story will go having played the games. But there's still a lot of chances they'll take a different direction or add more layers to her character, so that's still up for debate. No. At this point, my favorite character in both the games and the show is, of course, the Ghost of Seattle. But I want to know what you guys think. Who's your favorite character within the show so far, and is there anyone that stands out more than others? Either way, appreciate your feedback, appreciate your support, and remember, it's Snoqualmie, not Snoqualmie Salami, or whatever she said.